This has been a wild year for Stephen King adaptations. We've gotten good ones, bad ones, pretty decent ones, and now we have The Running Man. And this film is set in a dystopian future where wealth inequality has reached all-time highs, and people are able to compete on various game shows to hopefully work their way out of poverty. Ben Richards is played by Glen Powell. He is a down-on-his-luck blue-collar worker who has a wife and a sick baby for whom he can't afford proper medical care. So he joins a contest called The Running Man, where he has to make it a month while being hunted by hitmen. And any common person can turn him in for a monetary reward. But if he makes it for that entire month, his family is set for life financially. This movie is written and directed by Edgar Wright, who made some of the best comedy, action, horror fusions of the 21st century. And when Wright is behind the camera, you know you're going to get a really high level of technical proficiency, and that definitely is the case here. The action scenes are framed really well, they're very kinetic and creative, and the camera's always in the right place. The VFX are also pretty good. There are some CGI explosions that are definitely a cut above many of the other ones that I've seen this year. And a lot of Edgar's freedom to frame these scenes so well is based on the fact that Glen Powell is doing pretty much all of his own stunts here. He's great in the action scenes, and because he's the one doing them, the camera doesn't have to cut right after a stunt. It can stay on the character because that's the star. And while I will talk later about some of the fat in this film and the fact that I do think that it could have been whittled down pretty substantially, scene to scene, Edgar Wright is always really good at cutting to the chase. Very fast-paced, rapid-fire editing is kind of a trademark of his films, and that's definitely here as well. He doesn't want you to sit there and watch his characters ruminate or reflect on their lives. He wants them to constantly be talking or acting. And while that does sometimes come at the expense of character development and more of the quiet, emotional moments, he definitely keeps this thing moving and pretty far from boring for the entire runtime. Coleman Domingo's in the film, and he's unsurprisingly fantastic. Every time this guy shows up to work, he's one of the best parts of whatever movie he's in. He's tasked with delivering a lot of the exposition in the film, and I think this movie has a really smooth way of giving some of that exposition to us because he's playing the game show host for The Running Man. And so he's constantly reminding viewers who are just tuning in what the rules are and what the status is of the contestants at any given time. And I thought that was a really good way of getting us in the know about this game. Unfortunately, there's a lot of exposition in this film that is not smoothly handled at all. There are multiple scenes where characters will pull out video presentations and literal slideshows to let us in on their backstories or on what they think this network who records and airs The Running Man might be up to behind the scenes. And it is just horribly handled. Every time that happened, it took me right out of the movie. And unfortunately, that is indicative of a much more widespread problem with this screenplay. I think this thing is an absolute mess. The script is riddled with red herrings. There's a sequence with Michael Cera, and while it's entertaining because Michael Cera has the innate ability to deliver this kind of dialogue in this cadence perfectly, the sequence goes nowhere. I guess it culminates in a Home Alone style execution of a bunch of bad guys, but that's not really enough to justify its existence in this movie when the film is 2 hours and 17 minutes and definitely does not leave you wanting more. But the biggest problem in this movie is the tone. This film cannot decide what it is. I have not seen the previous film. I have not read the Stephen King novel, but I would imagine that it has a much grittier feel than this movie does. And that leads me to believe that Edgar might just not have been the proper filmmaker for this thing. So much of his trademark off-kilter humor and flashiness is here in this cold dystopian world, and it just clashes. It feels like Edgar Wright is trying to make a David Leitch movie in the Stephen King universe. I love all three of those artists, but this combination does not land for me. And that leads me to the protagonist. There are a lot of problems here, and one of them is Glen Powell. He's a good actor, but I think he's very miscast here. He isn't really given a chance because, like I said, the screenplay here just doesn't know how to handle the tone, and it definitely doesn't know what this character is or what's driving him. He starts out being revealed as a family man. We see some early scenes of him and his wife with their sick baby, which, by the way, are really poorly written and poorly acted scenes. There is zero chemistry here, and I mathematically understood what it was trying to tell me, but I felt nothing. But over the course of the runtime, Ben's motivation shifts a little bit, and that's not tracked very well by the screenplay. But regardless, whether he's a family man who's a force of nature because he's trying to provide for his loved ones, or whether he's a rebel who's trying to take down the system that's kept him and so many others in poverty, this character needs to be angry. And the film knows that. The screenplay is constantly trying to tell you that this guy's mad. The way that he gets on the show in the first place is because they think that he embodies rage, and that'll make for good TV. The problem is, Glen Powell is the happy capybara meme guy. And in addition to that, on nearly every page, he's given a funny little quip or a joke to make. So the movie doesn't dial in on that aspect of his character at all. And it's really not Glen's fault. This is a writing issue and a directing issue. And what you end up with is a weak first act followed by a mildly entertaining second act that ends up being mostly red herrings, and then a terrible finale. This third act is abysmal. A lot of the screen time is Ben talking to a villain on a TV screen, which given the technology, that's probably how it would go down, but it's not cinematic. And at the end of the day, I didn't leave the theater angry with the experience that I had, but this is one of the weakest efforts from Edgar Wright, if not his worst film. Its above average presentation just cannot save it from the jumbled tone and the lackluster storytelling. It's a genuine F screenplay, but there's enough talent behind the camera and in front of the camera that it's elevated to a status of mildly entertaining. And for all of those reasons, Running Man gets a C. I'm not recommending against seeing it because I do think there are far worse times you can have at the movie theater. I just don't really think any of it was successful at the end of the day, but if you have seen it, please let me know what you thought of it. I'm very interested in what people are thinking of this one at this point. If you enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it, and I will see you at the movies.